everyone. My name is Max Livingstone, and welcome to my presentation on my favorite movie. Now, I'm a huge film buff, and there are tons of movies that I really love, but for 12 years now, one has consistently stood head and shoulders above all the rest. 12 Angry Men. Yep, for those of you who don't know, 12 Angry Men is my all-time favorite movie. But before I can get into why, let's look at the details. What exactly is this movie? It's a courtroom drama released in 1957. This movie is 60 years old. Yeah, I literally just realized that as I was putting this together. This year happens to be its 60th anniversary. Anyway, according to the DVD I have, the runtime is 92 minutes, and it's rated U, or G here in Ireland, so there's nothing to prevent children from watching it, aside from maybe their own interest. This is our cast. Only a couple of them reveal their names at the very end. Mostly they're only ever identified by their jury numbers. Our main star is juror number 8, played by the great Henry Fonda. The only person missing from this snapshot is our main antagonist, number 3, played by one of my all-time favorite actors, Lee J. Cobb. And the rest of this ensemble cast all stand out in their own ways. None of them are wasted, so I'll just run through them all by jury number. Martin Balsam, John Fiedler, E.G. Marshall, Jack Klugman, Edward Binns, Jack Warden, Joseph Sweeney, Ed Begley, George Voskovec, whose name I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, and Robert Webber. And behind all this phenomenal talent is director Sidney Lumet. This was actually his very first feature film, and he'd go on to direct several other classic movies, including Long Day's Journey into Night, based on one of the most famous plays at the time, Murder on the Orient Express, based on an Agatha Christie novel, Dog Day Afternoon, Al Pacino's follow-up to The Godfather, and Network, which gave us one of the most famous movie quotes of all time, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!" Now let's look at the plot. Now the film is set almost entirely in one location, the jury room of a courthouse. It clearly takes place in New York City too, because one of the characters mentions that he can see the Woolworth building. We can assume it takes place at the same time the movie was made, the mid to late 50s. As I mentioned, our 12 key players are the jury of a trial that's just taken place. The trial is just finished, and the bulk of the movie follows real time as they fulfill their duty of discussing amongst themselves to determine the guilt or innocence of the accused, a boy on trial for the murder of his father. 11 of the 12 jurors are already convinced the boy's guilty, but Henry Fonda plays the lone dissenter who remains unsure. And the rest of the movie follows his efforts to convince the others that there is room for doubt. And as the film progresses, he and the others start to slowly pick apart the testimony and evidence that was presented at the trial, and start to realize that the case may not be as open and shut as it first seemed. And now it's time for me to answer the big question. Why is this my favorite movie of all time? Well, where do I begin? I can't possibly praise this film enough. I guess I'll start with my own personal history with it. I first saw it back in 2004 as part of a law program that was being run in transition year. The whole class watched it. I was actually pretty reluctant to watch it because at that time I was very dismissive of black and white movies. But as the film kept playing, I started to grow steadily more interested in what the characters were talking about, and by the time it was halfway through, I was totally hooked. So I guess you could also say it broke down boundaries for me and got me into older movies. And on top of that, even though it's just about 12 men sitting around and talking, there is still artistry on display in the form of a flawlessly realized atmosphere. As the film progresses, you start to notice the camera angles getting steadily lower and lower, and the shots start getting tighter, focusing on individuals instead of the whole group, which makes you feel trapped in a room that feels ever smaller and more confined, you know? Plus, I've always loved movies that can succeed in creating tension with a very small setting, because, well, there's a clear focus and very little to distract you. The Shallows is another example. One thing I really love about this movie is that it never reveals to the audience the truth of what happened. Just like with a real trial, these 12 jurors don't know what the truth is, and all that matters is what they decide. Another thing really clever about it is that it does explain why no one's asked these questions and made these arguments until now. There's a scene where number 8 points out that the boy's lawyer was court-appointed, so he probably didn't care enough to conduct a proper cross-examination during the trial. Oh, and here's an interesting fact. Daniel Radcliffe has also named this as his favorite movie. He's even mentioned that it was the first black and white movie he ever saw. So it amuses me to think that I share a favorite movie with Harry Potter himself. But on top of all that, the dialogue, of course. The lines are just perfect. This is one of the most quotable movies in existence, and every single line gives me chills.
Hey, no, wait a minute. We decided to, do this a certain way. I think we ought to stick to that way.
Stop being a kid, will ya?
When do you mean a kid?
What do you think I mean? K-I-D, kid.
And what adds so much heft to the proceedings is the fact that there's a man's life riding on their decision.
Look, there was one alleged eyewitness to this killing. Someone else claims he heard the killing, saw the boy run out afterwards, and there was a lot of circumstantial evidence. But actually, those two witnesses were the entire case for the prosecution. Supposing they're wrong.
What do you mean, supposing they're wrong? What's the point of having witnesses at all?
Could they be wrong?
What are you trying to say? Those people sat on the stand under oath.
They're only people. People make mistakes. Could they be wrong?
Well, no, I don't think so.
You know so.
Oh, come on, nobody can know a thing like that. This isn't an exact science.
That's right, it isn't.
That last line, more than anything else, hammers home how little actual truth and certainty there is here. One of my favorite lines comes right here, when number 8 notices that 2 jurors aren't even paying attention and are just playing noughts and crosses.
This isn't a game.
Did you see him?
Hey.
A nerve.
All right, listen.
An absolute nerve.
All right, forget it. It's not important.
This isn't a game.
No, it's not.
Who does he think he is?
All right, come on, look.
But this one takes the cake. In what may be my favorite movie scene of all time, number 11, who's been rather quiet and non-confrontational up to now, is appalled by the injustice in number 7's way of thinking.
I don't know about the rest of them, but I'm getting a little tired of this yakety-yakking back and forth. It's getting us nowhere. So I guess I'll have to break it up. I changed my vote to not guilty.
You what?
You heard me. I had enough.
What do you mean you've had enough? That's no answer.
Hey, listen, you just take care of yourself, huh? You know?
He's right. That's not an answer. What kind of a man are you? You have sat here and voted guilty with everyone else because there are some baseball tickets burning a hole in your pocket. And now you've changed your vote because you say you're sick of all the talking here?
Now, listen, buddy.
Who tells you that you have the right to play like this with a man's life? Don't you care?
Now, wait a minute. You can't talk like that to me.
I can talk like that to you. If you want to vote not guilty, then do it because you are convinced the man is not guilty, not because you well enough. And if you think he is guilty, then vote that way. But don't you have the guts to do what you think is right?
Now, listen.
Guilty or not guilty?
I told you. Not guilty.
Why?
Look, I don't have to...
You do have to. Say it. Why?
I don't think he's guilty.
I love this scene because I'm in complete agreement with number 11 here. When someone's fate is in your hands, you should always make your decision for the right reason and not be so callous about it. Now, is there anything I don't like? Well, there's very little I change about this movie, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. Still, the only nitpicks I can think of are exceedingly minor and far between. For one thing, it does bug me whenever kid-friendly versions of swear words are used, like heck or darn. Only the first of which is used in this movie, by the way. That's not to say I believe in just tossing curse words out willy-nilly, but if you are going to swear, then embrace it, damn it! Also, I have to admit, the movie is a little bit a product of its time, and some outdated customs are referenced. For example, there's a scene where they're discussing going to the cinema, and audiences today would most likely have no idea what a second feature is. You'd have to know that back then, movies were usually shown as double features, so for the single that I truly, fully, and unconditionally love this movie. So how can people view it? Well, it's not exactly an obscure movie. It's considered one of the all-time great cinematic classics. Hell, if you look on IMDb, it's in the top 10 best movies of all time, according to user ratings. As a result, it should be pretty easy to find anywhere. It's readily available on DVD and Blu-ray, or if you want to watch it online. Unfortunately, it's not available on Netflix, but I did find it on iTunes, and it should also be available on whatever other service you care to use. Thanks for listening. Any questions?